The Mirror, written by Carl East, narrated by Scarlett Day. I watch and wait. That's all I can do, because I'm trapped in limbo, and it was knowledge that got me here. I wanted it all, the eternal youth and the never-ending lifespan, but it wasn't worth it. You see, 75 years ago, I was looking for something special. I'd gone shopping with my husband, and he'd gone off to search for tools while I browsed for bargains. I'd found an antiques store. Upon entering the store, I was struck by how unusual some of the items were, and unique. The prices were fair as well, which surprised me. Then I found what was going to become a curse. It was a large, oblong mirror, which had its own stand. It stood out from everything else in that shop, but I noticed something else as well. There was writing inscribed at the base that I recognized as Latin. It read, Perpetualis aetas atis cessar, which meant perpetual aging cease. At first, I couldn't make out the last word, and to this day I wish I never had, for no sooner had I read the words in Latin than I was transported into a small room. At first, I was startled by these turn of events, and then I became worried, because upon turning around I found myself on the opposite side of the mirror. The store was there, plus the shopkeeper. I banged on the glass, to no avail. I then picked up the one and only chair in this small space and tried to smash the glass, but with no effect. After trying for an hour to extricate myself from this prison, I had to concede that there was no way out. I decided to look around at my surroundings. It was pretty cramped in there, with 3 walls and the only window being the mirror. There was a bookshelf with several books, which were covered in dust. Picking one at random off the shelf, I blew the dust off the top. It was entitled Spells and Their Effects. This had to be a fictitious book, I thought. Opening the book, I found it had magic spells that were in alphabetical order. Turning to the index, I found a row of words, all in Latin. The one that struck me first was the word sexus, which simply meant sex. I spoke the word aloud, and suddenly there was a naked man standing in front of me. I jumped back, surprised that anything had happened, and then I noticed his cock. He had a magnificent specimen, and he was fully erect, but he never said a word. Being a 24-year-old hot-blooded female, I couldn't help but get aroused. I walked around him, checking out the rest of his body. He had a lovely ass, small and rounded. I talked to him, but got no response. I couldn't help myself when I reached for his cock. He never flinched as I passed it from one hand to the other slowly, and when I felt it growing, I started to jerk it in my enclosed hand. Only then did he make a move. I discovered later that all I had to do to start them off was to initiate sex first, in order for them to respond. The response I got was mind-blowing. He immediately started to undress me. I allowed him to strip me naked, and then he picked me up, placing his cock to the entrance of my pussy before impaling me with it. No normal man could possibly do what he then did. He stood rigid and was pulling me up and down onto his huge cock for at least the next 15 minutes before coming. Once he'd placed me back on my feet, he simply vanished. I collapsed onto the chair, totally exhausted at what had just happened. I'd climaxed a number of times during that session. Regaining my composure, I decided to read the books at my disposal. The second one I took off the shelf was entitled The Mirror. I was compelled to read that one. The first page explained how the mirror worked and who had created it. Apparently, it was made by a sorcerer of the late 13th century whose name was Azimond. He'd intended to use it before he died. It also went on to explain that while in the mirror, the person wouldn't age. In effect, he/she would be immortal. That was all well and good, but if you're a prisoner, you're a prisoner, whether you're immortal or not. Nothing could change that. The part that really pissed me off was when I read that the only way out was for someone else on the other side of the mirror to read the inscription aloud in Latin. They would take the place of the one already trapped, but the chances of someone else being able to read Latin, let alone speak it out loud, was
Sample complete. Ready to continue?